Hey there, so gonna quickly show you what I've been playing around with. So I've been playing with Trenchbroom, making like sort of a visual fidelity test area. So I've made a basic map in Trenchbroom with a corridor, some lighting, some crates, and tested like lighting imports and tested materials. So this is what it looks like in Trenchbroom. Very basic, just using pictures. And then inside Godot, if you look at the map here, we've got some wall materials, some dark areas, and most importantly, I've added some light mapping to the scene. And there's a few things that are interesting about this workflow that I haven't figured out yet. One is the texture settings. I need to look deeper into this, but I seem to have figured out a way of sort of making them passable. But anyway, the way this works is it generates a mesh for your object, and I find that you do have to set up some settings for the objects. So the material settings, I haven't figured out how to persist them yet, but I will figure that out. But you can see here, look, I've just fixed the grid on the floor. The way this works is it sets a triplanar texture, which sets the coordinates for the world to the scale of the camera and the world. Sorry, to the scale of the world, not to the camera. So it means that if you have a grid pattern on something, it will always appear uniform. So you can use placeholder textures to fill your world out. So let me just get this set up. So this is just a minor caveat, I would say. Surface 3, I don't even think I use this one on anything. It's already set up. Surface 3 and 4. UV1, 0.25, triplanar. Now we do this on UV1 because UV2 is used by the light map. I'll talk about that in a second. So, right. There we go. Right, so you can see now all the grid textures are nicely aligned, as they were in Trenchbroom, and the white light is just white. Okay, save. So the way this works is you load a map file in, you unwrap the UV2, and then that allows you to create a light map GI, or a baked light map. So when I hit this button, it goes to the mesh and says, hey, have you got a UV2? Yes, you do. And inside that UV2, there's a light map. So you can bake levels out and have them look like something out of Source SDK or something like that, provided you've got the right textures and materials. And honestly, it looks beautiful. I mean, I'm playing around with some of the more advanced things like the SDFGI and comparing the two. I find that the baked light map produces a very nice natural result, and the SDFGI produces a very natural result too, if not more natural when you have fog enabled. But I would say SDFGI or the ray tracing isn't worth it unless you've got the volumetric fog. Just because of the effects it creates. And I'll show you what I mean in a moment once this finishes. So if you don't know, baked light map is just they take the space, they partition it, and they calculate light bounces for the lights that are in the scene. So this one, they've calculated that the light bounced off here and refracted and then lit up this wall. That's what it does. See these little nodes? They're little balls, and they are used in relative terms from the angle of the light to work out where the light bounces to and from and how far it should bounce to and from. Sorry, just declining a call. When it does that, the light bounces are then done and stored in the light map file, and then they're used to on the UV2 coordinate to actually render the light on the mesh. That's a very crap description because I'm not very familiar with the low level, but it's as good as I can get it. Now, when you're working in Godot, you also have the option to use SDFGI. So I'm just going to turn that off, and I'm turning volumetric fog off. So this is what you looks like when you're not using any ray tracing. And if you look at the view frame time information here, you can see that GPU time is currently about 2.77 milliseconds, right? if I enable SDFGI, the cost is quite high. You know, you're up to 1.64 milliseconds. If I enable volumetric fog, we're now up to 1.9 to 2, sometimes 4. But it does produce a very nice, you know, like smoky-like effect, especially when you're outside and then coming inside. It's nice, especially if you're making an industrial-style game. But for now, I'm just going to turn it off. Actually, no, we'll put it back to the way it was. Glow is off because I do not like glow. Right, so now we're going to save this, and I've dumped in a very basic character controller. I believe he's in this scene. Yeah, he is. Right, so we'll just run this game, and we'll see. We have a game world. Feels very much like being in the Hammer editor in Godot now because of this tool. You know, look at the dark hallway to the void. Jumping is working fine. And, you know, we've got a lovely little spotlight there to try out the lighting. So Godot is starting to produce really good results with this plugin. And I feel like because it makes the workflow with baked lighting really easy with the Qodot map plugin, it's really simple and easy to use. And for a game, I believe it will scale up well. Provided I can find how to set some of the material properties to the right values by default, I'm not worried about using this tool, even for the long term, because it's just so easy to use. For frame of reference, if you want to create a room, it's very easy. So we're going to make like a, go over here. We're going to just drag out the room. We're on the side projection. This is the top-down projection in the top. So we're going to add a little broom closet at the end of this room here, or storage room. So that's going to be our floor. This is our side view. So I think that probably needs moved. I could be wrong. Let me just look at it in the 3D view just to double check. So that's what our room's going to look like. Okay, and then we're going to center it, obviously. Probably going to do it there, though. We'll make it a little bit smaller. It's more of a broom cupboard, so we can use these coordinates on the side here. So we've got 2 blocks, 1 and then 2. Sorry, my eyes aren't very good these days. Yeah, I think that'll be okay for now. So now I just deselect everything, and then I draw my wall. Just deselect the deselection tool, and then draw my wall. And it's drawn an insane block the entire size of the room. That's okay. All I do is boop. And then you can see your wall in the 3D view as you're doing it. Again, this is lovely, easy to use. It feels like you're doing a CAD model more than anything, to be honest. You can see I've built a wall already, and then all I need to do to build the roof is Control D. And then all I'm going to do here is add a end piece. Now, something that the hammer tool could never quite get right was apparently, speaking to a guy today, was apparently when you would cut holes in objects, it wouldn't be able to do it. It would just break, basically. So something I'm going to demo right now is I want to make a hole in this wall. I want to add a little space for a window here. Right, now I could just deselect and then probably click drag, but it won't work out the projection correctly, so we'll do this instead. Sorry about that, my headset died. So what I'm going to quickly do is just, you know, we're going to add a window. I'm going to add a nice window though, so I'm going to position it properly. I would say if you had a hallway like this, you probably would put the window like there, and then you put another one. So what we'll do is we'll cut 2 windows in. So we're going to position them in the 3D view, make it look right in the 3D. I think that looks about right. It's got a little extra lip at the bottom, so you put your like heater or something below the window.
And then I'm going to select this, and I'm going to select Edit, CSG, and just tell it to subtract. So I'm just going to select this again, subtract, and as you can see, there is now a hole in there because it's subtracted correctly. Now, the reason why I think even in 2024, why a tool like this is good or better than Blender for the beginning is that as a game developer, doesn't matter who you are, any skill level, you could go in to use this tool, you could make the extension to the map, and then later on, if you really need to replace something like the mesh or this object here, this crate, sorry, I'll show you what I mean. Sorry, I moved the 3D view. So this is a crate. If you wanted to replace this layer, all you would do is change the class name to crate underscore 01. And in Godot, you would set your entity mapping to be, show you what I mean by entity mapping, please hold, entity definitions. You would make create crate underscore 01. Right now we're using world spawn solid class, which is fine, but what we'd like it to do is we'd obviously like it to be a crate. So we create a class, tell it, hey, for this class, replace it with this GLTF file, and then Godot replaces it for you with a tscene. So I think this makes going from your prototype, making all your game logic, much easier for the long term. Now, why I say that, I think that there are less modelers who use Blender. Sorry, there are more people who can probably use this tool than there are people who can use Blender. And this, by creating this sort of ease of editing, I think it makes it way easier to make a real game. Like, I find a lot of the deficit on any size studio to be the art. And it's probably the most expensive side of it as well. Like, it's the most complicated. Whereas you do not need to be an artist in order to place a wall. You know, a wall inside a building, it can be done by, in real life, it's a civil engineer. It's not done by an artist. Uh, and I feel like there should be some engineering for the level before there is an art direction as well in some cases, depending on the game type. Especially if you're set in like a space universe and the artist decides that for some reason to put some component in the wrong place or something, then suddenly you can't change it and you spent all this hours in the model and you have to get the model remade. Whereas this is like, no, the object should go here because otherwise it doesn't make any sense. Like they put the nuclear reactor next to the coffee machine for some reason. That's a bad example, but it's an example. So obviously I haven't reloaded the map yet, but you can see in here there's nothing here. And if I close down the game and waffle a little bit less, we can go to the Godot map, full build, unwrap UV2, which sets up the light maps, the rooms here. And now I need to quickly change the materials again. So I'm just going to not talk through this so I can just get it done quicker. 0.25. If you're wondering why we use UV1 and not UV2, UV1 is what you see, UV2 is the light map in this specific example. Light map's used for the light mapper. So the light mapper reads and writes the lighting data to there, I believe. The guy who implemented this was Pedro in Godot. He used to work with me, and he implemented the Embry light mapper from scratch. And I believe it's had a few iterations since that point, but yeah, it was done by Pedro. He's a great guy. I believe a lot of the other team are responsible for maintaining it now. I'm not sure. Right, anyway, so we go here, and we're going to add a few lights, actually. I probably should have done this in the map, but for the sake of right now, because I don't want to re-add all those materials, I will figure out how to fix that. Point light, so we'll add an omni light. Apparently it appears somewhere I didn't put it. Well, it didn't appear in a sensible place, that's for sure. Alright, we'll just add this to the roof. And just say enable some shadow, enable some power. Set it to static as well because then the light mapper can use it. We probably want the size to be a bit bigger than 0, eh? Range. Where's the range? Ah, wait a minute, it's because it's baked. Probably just need to bake it. Right, so when we bake this, I'm going to set this to medium just because it's a bit faster. So when we bake this, what will happen is the light map will be like, hey, oh, there's a hole here, and it'll simulate all the bounces for the room, the light bounces, and make them a bit more accurate. So we can see here that the light map's actually not worked very well. I did set a texture. Probably done something stupid that you're probably pointing out to me right now. So let's see. Probably put the light. There's a radius. Yeah, there is. I could not find that setting in my eyes. Right, so let's just do a little bit further. So that should, in theory, fill the entire room. And you can see it's not really updating. That's because we've set it to baked. So we bake it. Then when we're happy with the results, we'll increase the quality again. There we go. Now we've got a room. You can see how easy though that was to make. There was, sure in Blender that would be quite easy, but some of the things that I would say that are easier with this is things like scale, relative scale for your whole world is much easier to figure out. Whereas when you're working with a blend file, you're going to be working with 50 different files, and the scale can be quite hard to work out unless you do everything in one blend file. Then what happens when you're taking in scripts and stuff, you're going to start losing them. Whereas this presents a solution where artists and the scripts can be merged together in one place through the class system built into the map. So let's go to our new room and have a wee look, shall we? Okay, liking the look here. Gonna go for a wee walk about. And we're going into our control room. And there's nothing here, but there's a window into the void. Is that a window? Yes, it was a window. Anyway, yeah, so as you can see, that worked really well. I would say I personally would recommend that you don't start out with the fancy lighting. I would recommend that you go as simple as possible. I feel like, me personally, I prefer having the simple baked light maps. While it doesn't look as visually appealing, it is, 50% of your frame time here. So it can create a different aesthetic. I think if you're working in an underground area, which is what my game is, I'll need to enable it begrudgingly. But the performance impact is not negligible. So if you do have support for it, you should probably find a way of turning it off while still keeping some of the similar aesthetic. Like I think you can still enable volumetric fog without SDFGI. Yeah, you can. So that might not be as much of a performance penalty. No, it is. It's just as bad as having SDFGI enabled. I've got read. Sorry about that. My headset died. So apart from that, let me know what you think. I believe that this tool is really great. Consider I made this in like 30 minutes. I think that making a full game with this would be very practical, especially for 3D. Consider I've written zero code, I've done some dragging of boxes all day, and that's all I've really done. I've taught 3 other people how to like open this tool up, use it, set it up. It's fairly straightforward. I can walk you through it at some point in another video if you want. I'm going to work out how to do buttons, and I'll add some automatic doors here and go from there. So I'll give you a video update once I've made some doors and some controllable lights, maybe something like that. Anyway, yeah,
thanks guys. I hope you liked the little video. I made this randomly because I thought, oh, it might be interesting for you. Okay, cheers.